Dr. Bensong risked everything when he used the quantum leap accelerator to travel back in time. Now our team's working to find out why. As he leaps between bodies with no memory of who he is, he still has one hope. That his next leap takes him back to the...
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the new Quantum Leap Revival, Season 1, Episode 17, titled The Friendly Skies. The episode was directed by Linda Mendoza, first-time director for this series, but has a pretty extensive directing career in general. Mostly seems to be like a lot of TV work in her credits. And the episode was written by Alex Berger, first work on this series, but 11 writing credits altogether. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening to one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my Corman Productions channel on YouTube, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and please subscribe to my channel. Our research assistant, Kelly M., pointed out that Nanrisa Lee, who plays Jen in this series, was out for this episode because she got sick with corona.
Oh, the last episode.
Yes, so that's why she was not in the previous episode.
Gotcha.
She also suggested that we might see Ben and Addison's family with a kid in the future storyline. Though the preview, I don't know, it's a little bit iffy on that. So, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
I enjoyed the episode. I thought the leap was a solid story. I'm not gonna, call it my favorite. I've been calling a lot of episodes my favorite lately. I'm gonna put this one solidly in the middle of the bag.
Yeah, I thought this episode was good, decent. It's kind of hurt a little bit by the fact that last week was an amazing episode, and it's sandwiched in between that episode and the finale, which we really want to get to. But it's a nice, solid episode. I see a lot of things that they figured out that works in this series, as opposed to earlier episodes. They figured out a lot of things, and I appreciate that episode for that. So anyway, we start this episode off with Ben holding a big knife in his hand, and he's leaped into a woman again. That would make 7 out of 18 episodes for this series. He's probably not going to leap into a woman in the season finale, but who knows?
Well, he's going to have 2 leaps in the finale, so we got 2 chances.
Right. So it's quite possible that he might. We have no idea who he's leaped into at the end of this episode. We'll
speculate on that later.
Right. Anyway, so he's holding a knife. He's basically cutting up meat for a passenger who's complaining that his food is too rare. His meal looks better than anything that I've ever eaten on an airplane.
Yeah, this is back in the day when real food was served on airplanes.
Yeah, the most I got was a bag of pretzels, and I'm during my flights, and when I went to and from Seattle.
Yeah. And we're also reminded right away that this is back when there's smoking on the plane, as a passenger asks Ben to refresh the ashtray.
Right. Several people were asking for things at a time. How very rude of them, including a kid that is important to the episode, Corey, though we don't get much more information on him at this time. The flight seems like a bumpy one. We're flying through a thunderstorm. We cut to the future where Ian is not happy about shutting Ziggy down, which we decided we had to do in the last episode, though that wasn't in the discussion then, because Ziggy is the mole for Martinez.
Right, and we get that discussion here of what does that really mean?
Right, and Addison says a lot of the same things that we were saying.
Right.
That it means that basically Ziggy knows everything that we're doing now and is giving information in the future to Martinez, and that's why he's one step ahead.
And it doesn't mean there's anything nefarious about Ziggy. It's just simply that's the nature of having, this all-knowing sentient computer.
Right.
So yeah, they explained all that. I still see people are confused by it.
Really?
Yeah, so there's I'm sure the people listening to us aren't confused.
Right.
Those are the hardcore
we have
fans
a pretty
smart
smart audience, the few members that we have that regularly listen to us. Jen is thinking things from a purely security perspective, which makes total sense from her character. If Ziggy is a security risk, by all means, shut it down.
Right. Because they've established we can do this without Ziggy. It's just going to be a lot harder.
And, Addison is thinking about it from a pragmatic perspective, but Ian is thinking about it from a functional perspective. Plus, they kind of think of it personally.
Yeah.
Like it's a part of them as far as they're concerned.
Right, and they say, well, no, it's not personal, and I think it was Jen who's like, yeah, but it really is.
Right.
Like, you can't see it because you're too close, but you're being personal.
I mean, at the same time, like, Ziggy is responsible for a lot of the stuff that happens, like the probabilities and all that. So Ian does have a point. It's not totally personal, but it is very personal.
But they also have to remember they do have the option if they really get stuck. They can just turn Ziggy back on.
Right.
If, push comes to shove and that's their only option.
Right. And I mean, that might be harder to do than to shut it down, but we don't know that for sure. Ian ends up losing this fight. Magic orders Ian to do whatever is necessary to shut Ziggy down. In the past, Ben is serving a kid, Corey, who seems difficult to please and a bit of a chatterbox. He's kind of treated like a spoiled rich kid in this episode, but he's really not that bad.
Well,
I mean, he is a pain. But
he shows a lot of progression throughout the episode. And definitely it starts off where he's being presented as he's a pain in the butt. Right. And his character obviously is going to grow. And, as we get to know him better, it's easy to see why he's a little needy.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense.
Yeah. And this is all we also learned that this is Ben's host's first transatlantic flight.
Yes. This is the first time that this character, the person that Ben has leaped into, has traveled internationally. He ends up having a friendship with Holly, who says the money is better on these flights, and the planes are generally nicer. So once, Ben gets used to it, that's the only way that she'll want to fly. So this is where we meet Holly, which is one of the few characters that are important in the story. We do see a lot of characters here, but only a few of them are important, and I think that's, once again, one of the ways that the creators have figured things out. Like I've said before, that like too many characters, too much focus definitely hurts episodes, whereas the focus is smaller here, so it definitely helps this episode a lot.
Yep. Obviously, there's a lot of extras, but they don't
they're not really
they don't come
matter.
into play. A few of the extras come into play.
Such as an older woman that we soon meet who needs to get her insulin, which is something that does come up later. Ben is sent upstairs to see if anyone upstairs needs service.
Yeah.
Upstairs looks fancy.
Upstairs it's like a lounge. I've never been on that kind of plane.
Neither have I.
I don't think that type of plane still flies, the double-decker lounge planes. I could be wrong.
I have no idea.
I think that's an Adam question.
Probably not. Things are definitely different now, that's for sure. When Addison appears, she has a similar reaction to the food being served as I did.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I got some extra cornflakes, and I considered that a victory, and these people are getting caviar, and like, geez. Addison claims to... Oh, yeah, okay, so Ben is happy to see her, because he thought for a moment he would never see her again after almost dying in the last leap.
Right, they live in that moment a little bit of, Ben literally almost died a few minutes ago for, the last time they communicated with each other.
And the episodes of Ben's is pretty much what impacts a lot of Ben's decisions during the course of this leap.
Yeah, it comes out right now that, Ben thinks he's gotten to be too trusting.
Mm-hmm. And that's a little weird for me because it seems like Addison was the one who was too trusting. Addison was the one who convinced Martinez to help. Addison was the one that convinced Ben to work with Martinez. And Addison is the one who really should have been keeping an eye on Martinez more than... I think that's more on Addison than Ben, to be honest with you.
That's fair.
Okay, so Addison claims to never have been worried. I don't believe her, but nice try. I mean, I'm sure Ben probably is convinced by that, but I'm not. Ben thinks that because of what happened with Martinez in the last episode... Okay, we've just covered that. Never mind. Okay, so despite Ziggy being shut down, the handling still works because it runs on a separate system.
Yeah, which we had discussed, that we thought that was the case. Although I do feel like too much worked in this episode than what I would have expected would have worked without Ziggy.
I think it would have been stronger if there were some things that were not, as available.
There should have been more mentions like, oh, well, if Ziggy was up, we could have done this or that.
Ian says it a bunch of different times, but...
I feel like they really presented the only thing Ziggy's bringing to the table is the statistics at this point.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't think there'd be a problem with them communicating and, using the imaging chamber, but I don't know. I feel like there was a little too much going on for Ziggy to be down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it should have been presented as a bigger problem. And I also think that would have been made stronger if we'd seen Ziggy play a bigger role throughout the season. So that's not just this episode problem, it's the way they kind of structured season 1, but...
Right. They really downplayed what is Ziggy and what really do they do in the scope of all of this technology that they're using. Ziggy's apparently a much smaller proponent than we kind of go in thinking.
Right.
But also here we hear that, Ian explained all of this to Addison of how they're separated, but she didn't really pay attention. She says, I zoned out. And that's their explanation to the audience is, well, Ian figured it out.
Right.
And that's how we always get it.
They do that similar thing later in the episode.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
Yeah.
Where Ian is the voice of explanation. Whether we hear the explanation or not, Ian knows. So it's okay. We just got to go along with it because Ian knows.
Ben turns out to be Lois Mitchell from Chicago on her first international flight. Addison says that she has no idea why they're there. And Ben says, so in essence, we are flying blind. And I see what Ben did there.
Ooh, is that your next dad joke?
Yes, it might be.
So we get a date this time.
Yes, what was the date again?
August 5th, 1971. And we're on a flight from London to New York.
Oh, okay. She asks Ben if he knows the flight number. Ben is impressed to realize he has pockets, and from what I hear from women, they are always happy when they have pockets, because they don't always.
Yeah, and Addison was impressed.
Yes.
She was like, ooh, nice dress.
Indeed, and Ian would later be impressed with Ben's look as well. They get the number, and Addison realizes that the flight goes down in the Atlantic that night, and everyone on the plane dies.
366 souls on board.
Oh boy. And credits. After the credits, Ian is complaining about racing against the clock without Ziggy's help. And Magic is somewhat sympathetic, but not really. According to Ian, they don't know why this flight crashed. There were a bunch of different theories, but no actual information. The black box was not recovered, and there was no distress signals sent out.
Mm-hmm. And the team, really says congratulations to Ian here. Look how much you accomplished without Ziggy's help. You can do this. You don't need Ziggy. And we learned that it was really easy for Ian to jump into this because they go to sleep listening to the show Airplane Disasters.
Which is funny because Jen gives them a funny look, but my mom recently, or I'm not sure if it was her who said it or her husband, Troy, who said that they go to sleep listening to crime podcasts. So this is not that unusual.
So the writer of this episode, Alex Berger, went on Twitter and kind of threw Dean Georgeris under the bus.
Oh.
That this tidbit actually comes from him because this is something Dean does in real life,
okay.
Which is listens to the Airplane Disaster, whatever show,
gotcha.
to go to sleep. And it's funny because Adam watches all that stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, hey, whatever
he
it takes.
likes to go to sleep to air traffic control audio whenever,
I do like rainstorms and stuff like that, and maybe occasional soothing music. So, and sometimes podcasts as well. Not murder podcasts necessarily, but to each his own, or their own, as is in this case. In the past, Addison suggests making an emergency landing. Ben wonders how he's supposed to make that case to the captain. Hey, Captain, I know I'm a walking sex symbol, but we should divert hundreds of passengers into the middle of nowhere. And Addison's like, well, maybe we want to phrase it differently than that. But that's what we should say.
Yeah, and that goes back to the whole, is Ben the right person to make any difference here?
Right.
I don't know if a flight attendant's really the most powerful person to get involved in what's about to go down.
Actually, why not just leap into the captain, other than the fact that he probably would have drank the coffee and died. That's the only explanation I can have for that. But
yeah,
so he probably wouldn't have realized that the coffee was poisoned and just drank it up.
Right.
So perhaps that's why. And by the way, this little, bit with wow, suddenly I cannot remember his name. With Ben. Wow. Okay. All right. So it took me a long time to remember what the name of the main character is. That's what happens when you get old. Okay, so this little bit with Ben, like saying, oh, I should say these crazy things, is a reoccurring theme throughout the episode. He's done it in the past, but he does it twice in this episode. So Ben ends up taking the coffee from the stewardess, Holly, into the people who are flying the plane.
Yeah, and he's doing that just as an excuse to get to talk to the flight crew.
And Holly ends up warning that they can be a little crass, because this is the 1970s and things are a little bit different than they are during the current time. Nowadays, I'm sure if you made these comments, you would have a sexual harassment lawsuit.
Oh, absolutely.
Coming. So
yeah, they've made it very clear already that, these women who are the stewardesses have to deal with a lot of things they wouldn't have to face today.
Right. His attempts don't really go well. The captain pretty much shuts him up and says...
Captain hits on him.
Yeah.
And then, basically says, why would I listen to you?
Right. Though Ben ends up quoting the captain asked a question. I forgot what the question was exactly.
Something about...
flight speed or something.
Something about something on the airplane. And what's the optimal number? Addison
ends up giving the answer, and that still doesn't convince the captain to listen to Ben at this point. To Addison later, after he leaves this little scene, and he does this little hopping thing out of the flight crew area. I don't know what that was about, but it was interesting. He says that he's starting to think that the 1970s was not the best time for being a stewardess. What would clue you into that?
Not the best time to be a woman or a lot of other
minorities,
sects of human...
I don't even think non-binary people were a thing back then, or if they were not openly discussed. That is for sure. Addison says that the captain is under investigation, and she's going to check out why. And Ben asks, well, what am I going to do? And Addison suggests it's a good time for service and a smile. Addison leaves. Holly comes in drinking a nipper, and she tells Ben that Corey is driving her nuts. Apparently, his father owns the airline. Corey ends up asking for a complicated ice cream, and Corey offers to show Ben where all the ingredients are, but Ben shuts him down.
Yeah, and this is giving us, context that, hey, this kid has access to the plane on a regular. So at this point, we still don't know who to suspect here.
Right. But I don't know, he seems like a nice enough kid to me. I mean, sure, he's annoying, and he would be a total nightmare to, provide service to, but still, I mean, he's not that bad of a kid.
Well, he wouldn't be that bad, if he was the only person you had to deal with, but when you've got 366 people you're trying to tend to...
That is a fair point. Ben ends up talking to the girl, whose name I forgot. Leslie, I think it was?
Leslie, yes.
Leslie, okay. Leslie is, who turns out to be a private security person who's protecting Corey, but mainly runs errands for Corey.
Yeah, so she works for Corey's father, for the family, doing private security. And she comes back because she forgot her lighter and needs some matches. Go back to the smoking on the plane bit.
Right. And Addison points out that she's an ex-cop, so she might be able to help. But Ben declines, mainly because of what happened the previous week with Martinez.
Right, he's decided he can't trust anybody.
And Ben wants to know, well, how would I get her help? By asking, saying that I'm a time traveler and I need to know how and why this plane crashed. So that's the second time that Ben's being all sarcastic in the same manner. And again, Addison thinks that the wording could use a little bit of work.
Yeah.
So that was another funny one.
I agree with her, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that that would be the way to go. In the future, Jen finds info on the captain. Apparently, he was getting shock therapy to deal with his various mental health issues.
Well, you know what I loved about this scene? Is we got to see the team of extras that work on the project finally interacting in some way. I mean, they didn't get any lines, but they're actually standing around. Ian's giving directions to them.
That's right. Before we get all this information, Ian is basically leading this crew.
Saying, okay, I want you to look up this, and you're going to look up this. And it's like, wow, these people actually are here. They're not just part of the background, because they've literally never interacted before.
Right. So, that's a good point. Basically, he was putting money offshore so that he could keep the treatment for his mental health issues off the books, because the mental health disorder might very well end his career. Because that's how
and they did talk about the stigma, which is something that
falls directly into my wheelhouse. I actually really appreciate this season for occasionally addressing these type of topics and bringing them up. Yeah, it's definitely refreshing, because you don't really see that in media very much.
Yeah, so Dave has a lot of End the Stigma content on Corman Productions. If you want to go take a perusal through the rest of the YouTube channel, you can find all of that.
Yes, feel free. I could always use the views, and, it would be helpful in ending the stigma if you guys got on board with that.
So also in this, they did mention that the pilot has had electroshock therapy.
Yes.
Which brings us back to that shock theater, which has been so
Right.
fresh on our minds after last week.
It's interesting that we got that reference here and not in the previous episode.
Yeah, right.
So yeah,
but it's definitely pulls on that, being fresh in our minds as we were thinking about it during Ben Interrupted.
And Ian thinks that this all makes sense because one of the theories from some group that I didn't quite catch.
It was from a Reddit poster, and the person who posted its username is Oswald was an alien 117.
Well, that's quite a theory.
Which is another reference to our original series.
Right. Yes.
Because clearly they are talking about Lee Harvey Oswald, which is Adam and Mine's next episode to watch, by the way. We watched
really? Is that far
we watched
already?
Leap for Lisa last night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize
he has some interesting thoughts on that. Maybe we can scoot around to that at the end.
Okay. Yeah, so the theory from this Reddit poster was that the plane crashed from pilot suicide. And anyway, Ben enters the flight area, the crew area, and discovers that almost all of them are experiencing issues. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The flight crew area, where all the pilots are, where they're piloting the plane.
Pilots, yes. The pilot,
yes.
The co-pilot, and the flight engineer are who's in the cockpit.
And they are experiencing issues such as bleeding from the mouth and convulsing, and they are quickly dead. The pilot and the other person,
the flight engineer,
are both dead.
Yeah, very quickly we learned that Oswald was an alien 117's theory is wrong. It's not pilot suicide because the pilot did not crash the plane.
Well, if he's wrong about that, what else could he be wrong about? Perhaps Oswald was not, in fact, an alien after all.
Maybe he was a time traveler from the future.
It's possible. You never know. Okay, so the co-pilot didn't drink the coffee, meaning that the coffee was the culprit. The co-pilot, according to the co-pilot at this time, is saying that he put the coffee down so as to let it cool, but that's actually not the case, as we will later discover. Ben thinks Holly might have done it after he gets an accusatory stare from the co-pilot.
Because, Holly is the one that made the coffee.
And the one that wanted to bring it in.
Was going to bring it to them, yeah.
Holly is nowhere to be found. Ben is going to try and find her, and Addison keeps pushing Ben to get someone to help him who isn't a hologram. Ben grabs a nearby phone to continue talking to Addison without looking crazy, and I'm glad that they're finally taking that into account. That they're actually, demonstrating Ben trying to do this.
They're getting a little better.
Yeah. So that's one way in which this series is improving overall in its presentation.
And I think, that would be an organic growth for Ben is to,
oh, yeah, definitely.
To start internalizing the fact that you look crazy when
you're talking to people who aren't there. Absolutely. Addison tries to pep talk him, saying he's almost on his last leap. And Ben says that's all the more reason not to screw this leap up.
Now, I was confused by this. Are they under the assumption that once they get to this final showdown with Martinez, the end of their slingshot, that Ben's just going to leap home?
I'm not really sure. I kind of think that's what they assume is going to happen.
They assume that. I don't know did we know all along they were assuming that this trip was going to end? Well,
I'm assuming that they think that when Ben reaches the end game, that he's not going to continue leaping.
Because it was pre-programmed that way?
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't quite know what they think. Maybe they think that's what's going to happen.
I was a little taken aback by Addison assuming that he's almost home.
Right.
I don't feel that almost at your goal destination automatically equates to almost home.
Well, I mean, if you are just 5 years in the future at the project, then why would you keep going? Maybe just stop there. Like, screw the 5 years and just continue on from there.
Well, if they have control over it.
I guess.
But, I mean, I don't know. Like, they hadn't resolved retrieval yet.
Right.
That's why they hadn't leapt yet. That's why they were still years away from doing this. That's the one thing they were still trying to figure out so that, another leaper doesn't get stuck in time.
Right.
So I feel like maybe they're a little over-optimistic to assume that that's what this means.
Right. Or that they're even going to, succeed in whatever mission Ben is setting out to do in the first place. And what happens at that point? I mean, I certainly don't know.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait till the fall, I'm sure, to see.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we'll get, a little sneak peek, but we shall see.
But I'm fairly confident this isn't going to end with Ben coming home and...
No, I doubt
and everything is, done.
Unless... Yeah, I don't believe that's going to be the case because there still is a season 2 to deal with. That doesn't necessarily mean that Ben continues to be the Leaper, as I suggested last week.
Right. I mean, anything's possible, but I just felt like they were being a little over presumptuous in thinking that they got this figured out.
Right. Okay.
So the team starts, they're looking into Holly's history now.
And this is a total red herring. They go into detail about Holly's situation with her boyfriend being a member of the IRA, which is some kind of terrorist organization in Ireland, I believe. I don't actually know what they do.
I don't know what the IRA is. I was hoping you knew.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some information on them in the past, but there's some kind of terrorist organization that operates.
It's enough that they are pretty convinced that Holly's involved.
Right.
Because of her association with her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. In the past, Ben encounters Corey and tells him that he has a job to do and that the world doesn't revolve around him.
Ben tells off Corey. Had enough of that kid.
He meets another passenger who is basically sleeping or unconscious or something. He knocks over his pill bottle, which I guess is just labeled what it is. I'm not sure that would be the case. But he was drinking, and it was Quaaludes that he had. Yeah. Now, Quaaludes is a drug that was readily available in the 1970s. I'm pretty sure it's not available now, or it's less available.
More regulated?
Yeah. I don't think that's something that you can just take these days like they did back in the 70s.
But Ben told this passenger, Quaaludes and alcohol doesn't sound like a great combination.
It is not. Any kind of drugs and alcohol or any kind of medications and alcohol.
Made me at this moment suspect that this person is one of the hijackers because maybe they're about to die and they're just trying to zone out.
Right. But then he just kind of stays zoned out for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm not even sure he's ever aware that the plane was being hijacked. I mean, good for him, I guess. Okay, so Ben finally finds Holly, who is shocked to learn that the captain is dead. Ben accuses Holly, who of course is offended, I mean, wouldn't you be, asks if he believes her or not when she goes away. If not, Ben says she's a great actress. In the future, Ian and Jen continue digging. Ian is still cranky about Ziggy, but then reveals in a heart-to-heart with Jen that it's not just about Ziggy, it's about the fact that he doesn't understand, doesn't understand why they left in the first place. And so that's also
we're reminded that is still, that's still hanging on Ian's conscience, not really understanding how we get from here to where they end up leaping to start all of this, and still really questioning, was that the right choice or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, as we see later in the episode, it seems very much the right choice.
Yeah, but they don't know that yet.
Right. No, but we certainly do by the end. Jen says that they could live without Ziggy, but they would be lost without Ian. And, just a couple episodes ago, she was very bad at pep talking. I thought this was pretty good. So, yeah, anyway. In what I assume is the flight attendant's locker area, Ben is looking through Holly's stuff and is not finding anything suspicious on her. Corey comes in and wonders why Ben is going through her stuff. Eventually, they discover that the tamper seal on the emergency equipment is ripped. Ben checks it out and finds money, poison, and eventually a passport of the co-pilot, who we now know is one of the people behind the crash.
Yeah, which makes sense.
It does.
When you look at it, this is a go bag, so you can assume here, you can, extrapolate that their plan wasn't to crash the plane.
Right.
They're planning on getting out of this.
Right.
So having someone who can fly the plane is kind of instrumental in that, if your plan isn't literally to crash the plane.
I mean, what would be the point of that? Just crash the plane so you all die?
I mean, it's happened.
Yeah, true, but there has to be a purpose.
Without the motive here,
Right.
But we can see because of this go bag and the passport, they do have a plan after this flight.
Yes.
So you do need someone who can fly the plane in order to survive your hijacking.
Right. Corey's security officer, Leslie, comes in, and Corey tells her what's going on.
Which, makes sense to get her involved at this point.
Yes, but as it turns out, she was in on it. She points a gun at Corey and says, well, I guess that spoils the surprise. Surprise! Addison says that Ben was right to not trust that particular person, after all. As the flight attendants are held at gunpoint on the floor
by two other hijackers,
Leslie announces over the speaker that the flight will not be going to New York and that they'll be fine if the airline pays the ransom. Well, that's certainly comforting. In the future, we learn that the men with the guns are mercenaries. that the co-pilot and Leslie hired. And apparently they have money problems. So I have to ask, how did they hire these people in the first place? With the promise of...
Well, we know they've got the money in the go bags.
Okay.
So they have some funds.
Okay.
It takes money to make money.
Yeah, I guess so. And they must have promised the mercenaries more money.
Yeah, part of the cut of the ransom,
right.
I'm sure.
Ian points out that there are way easier ways to get money. Like you can rob a bank, which is on the ground and not a million miles in the air. And Magic says that it's about power. The hijackers tend to feel disrespected. And I'm going to take his word for it. I don't really know the psychology of people who commit hijackings. I'm not even really sure how often this kind of thing happens.
Yeah. Well, apparently we were very wrong last week when we said we weren't sure about any hijackings in the 70s.
Oh.
Apparently the 70s were full of airplane hijackings. It was the height of airline hijackings in history, which I know nothing about.
I'm sorry to have missed that.
Yeah, we were both bored after this period, so it was not on our radar that's a thing. Yeah. But this week, looking at the Twitter and Facebook discussions, definitely was a thing. Oh. This is the era to have an airline jacking.
Well, I'm glad that they didn't bother with any of my 5 fights in the past couple weeks. Ben tries to convince Howie to help him, and she's cranky because anyway. She's cranky because Ben accused her of this crime before, and maybe being held at gunpoint has something to do with the fact that she's not in the greatest of moods.
Yeah.
Ben comes up with a plan and goes into the cabin where the mercenary is, and Ben is lucky he didn't just get straight up shot by sneaking up on the mercenary like this. He says that the people need water. You don't want the passengers to get sick. That would be a very unpleasant hostage situation and a hell of a cleanup. The hijacker grudgingly agrees. Ben talks to the elderly woman, and Ben says that the woman needs her insulin, even though she already had her shot, because this is part of his new plan.
Yeah. So she goes in the back with them, and this hijacker doesn't seem concerned about what they're doing. You would think he'd want to monitor this himself, but
I mean,
he's a mercenary, not very smart.
It's also an elderly woman and a flight attendant who's, a woman, so he's probably not thinking too much about, any problem. But he is suspicious of Ben's offer of water and demands that Ben drink it, which he does, and he finds it very cool and refreshing. That's good. It's good to like water and be hydrated, especially during hijacking.
Yeah, and then Ben pours another glass of water for him. Now, I thought they put the poison in the pitcher, knowing that the guy was going to refuse the glass and it was going to be in the next glass that was poured. But instead, Ben throws that water into his face and then stabs him with the insulin needle.
Which also happens to contain some Quaaludes.
Yeah, enough.
So there was a point to that earlier scene.
Enough to, I forget what he said. Something bad.
Knock out a horse or something along those lines. Okay, so
they've taken out the coach hijacker. They have one person stationed in first class, one person stationed in coach, and then our two lead people are in the cockpit.
The co-pilot, whose name I never bothered to get, and Leslie.
The co-pilot's name is Kirk.
Kirk. Oh, wow. Kirk has certainly gone wrong. Kirk is broken bad. Okay, so Ben ends up talking to Corey, who's getting sick. He's basically hyperventilating. And Ben says that on the bright side, Ben was wrong. The world really does revolve around him. And he tells him that people let him down. That people let you down, and that's just life. And Corey's like, wow, this is a terrible pep talk. And of course, Ben is usually better at this, but he says it's been a really bad week.
Yeah, so at this point, we've made it to first class. They don't know that the hijacker in the rear of the plane is down. So everyone in the rear of the plane is, no longer at gunpoint.
Right.
And Ben is trying to work his way to the cockpit to take out the co-pilot and Leslie.
Another passenger attacks the hijackers. People end up getting shot, but the hijacker was taken out.
Yeah, the guy gets shot, and I don't know if he died.
I think in the next scene we see him getting his arm tended to. I think
so at this point, the pilot and the flight engineer are dead.
Yes.
But we don't have any other fatalities. I don't think.
Nope.
So so that guy's okay. That's good. And then this hijacker number 2, the first class hijacker, I think it ended with him, like, being hit in the head with a bottle.
Something along those
So
lines.
I guess he's knocked out.
Right.
In addition to, the guy with the insulin thing is knocked out.
Mm-hmm. So that's 2 down. Ben reassures the passengers that he has a plan. Addison asks, "You do?" And Ben says, "Kinda." Ben enlists the help of Corey after Addison convinces Ben that he did not make a mistake getting Martinez help. And I agree. Once again, I think that was more on Addison than anything else.
Yeah, he definitely needs help, but also you've got hundreds of people on this plane.
Mhm.
Why is this kid the only person you're asking for help?
Yeah,
I feel like there had to be some other capable hands that could have stepped up here.
I'm not sure, other than the fact that Corey is the one that we've gotten to know.
Or did you, I don't know, maybe want to ask the flight if there's any other pilots or anyone else with any airplane knowledge?
Right.
Might have been helpful.
Yeah, it could have been. Ben tries to talk the hijackers out of doing what they are doing, but it doesn't work, and I don't think he expected it to. Because then he proceeds to gas the co-pilot and the ex-cop with some kind of thing that he concocted.
Yeah, it was like
Addison.
a smoke bomb that Addison helped him build using the ice packs and sugar.
Right. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, I'd look that up, but I don't think I want that in my search history.
No, you don't want to look up smoke bombs in your search history. Back in the day when I was doing a school project, I looked up how to make an atomic bomb, and I don't know. I think I might have issues if I tried to do that these days. Maybe, I don't know if it's for a school project, like I did it on the school servers. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that they are tracking nowadays. Like random comment, but one of my coworkers' kids apparently looked up how to make a noose just out of curiosity. I don't think he was trying to do anything with it, but yeah, the school security noticed that and were like, "Hey, what's the deal here?" And they ended up calling her in to talk about that.
Yeah.
But so they're more carefully monitoring these stuff than they were.
We have our own Ziggy monitoring us in our world that we live in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's called our U.S. government is spying on us in every possible way. And of course, to the U.S. government who's listening in, I'm totally just kidding. Anyway, moving along. So this works. They knock out the flight crew that is still there with the Leslie and the co-pilot, Kirk, Captain Kirk.
Co-pilot Kirk.
Yes. Anyway. Corey doesn't feel up to the task of flying from his very few flying lessons on a much smaller plane, and nor really does Ben. Corey is sent to fix mechanical issues. I'm not quite sure what they were exactly.
Okay, so when they got to the cockpit, I think Ben was under the assumption that this kid could land the plane.
Based on his earlier boasts about...
Based on saying he's taking flight lessons. Now, this kid's what, like 14 maybe?
The actor is like 19.
Oh, is he?
Yes. I looked him up, and I happened to see that the actor himself
I got the
19.
impression that he was younger than that. But
Probably
either
was.
way, he's wet under the ears.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's the first, obviously, to say, I don't know how to do this. But it's the kid who tells us even the co-pilot wasn't going to be able to land this plane because you see that warning light, the hydraulics are gone.
Gotcha.
This plane is going down. There's nothing we can do. It doesn't matter if you know how to fly the plane or not. And Addison is able to use that, and probably talking to Ian or whoever, they're talking through the hand link, to realize that, well, if you can reroute the hydraulics that are on some other part of the plane to the engines. And somebody just needs to go into whatever bay. I didn't get all the technical details, but when Ben tells Corey's like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I can handle it." So that's why Corey goes to redirect the hydraulics from wherever the hydraulics are still working to the engine, so the plane doesn't automatically crash.
And somewhere in between here, we have a scene with Ian and Magic back at the project where Ian gets really testy with Magic. Magic asks a question, and Ian is like, "I can either do this or I can explain. I can't do both."
Yeah, that was, I think, trying to come up with the hydraulics plan in the first place.
Right. And wow, that was really surprising.
So they make the decision, Corey's going to go work on the hydraulics, and Ben, Lois, the stewardess, is going to land this plane. And Ben says, "Great. How am I going to do that? Because I don't even have Addison." Addison's like, "I'm going to go watch the kid." Not sure why, because you can't interact with him at all.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, Addison is basically useless. I believe this is a justification just to get Ian here.
Yeah.
And it's good that we're using that. That we set the precedent where that's possible for other people to interact with Ben.
Right.
And I know
Yeah.
there is a reason why we're doing this.
Right. This scene had to happen now.
I mean, I don't understand why Ian would be the best person to tell Ben how to land a plane.
Well, remember, Ian's been listens to all this airplane disaster stuff. Ian's the one who's been studying this all morning, or all whatever time of day this is happening. Ian probably just felt more capable of explaining it
I guess
than
so.
Addison, maybe. So Ian is now there with Addison.
And Ben actually remembers Ian.
Ben recognizes Ian, and Ian says, "Tell Jen she owes me $5." Because Ian's the next person to get recognized. Poor Jen.
Yes, that's really sad of Jen. Hey, Jen, if you're listening, I remember you, so I hope that counts for something. Ian ends up complimenting Ben on his look, his stewardess look in this scene, which is like a nice little subtle comment there.
Oh, and the way that Ben confirmed that he remembers Ian said, is our karaoke duet Under Pressure?
It's a good song.
Yeah, and so I really want to see that.
Yeah, you want to see Ian and Ben performing Under Pressure?
Yes, absolutely. Now, this question was posed to Twitter. Dean actually said they couldn't do it because it would have cost too much. It would have been like their whole budget.
Oh, the song?
Yeah, the rights to... Apparently it costs, he said, 5 to 50 times more to have someone sing a song than to just play it.
That's crazy.
That is. It makes me have an appreciation of karaoke scenes.
I guess so.
In
Wow,
media
geez.
more.
I don't see them very often, and I guess I know why.
Yeah, and it could also be that they plan on giving us that at some point in the future.
Maybe.
It's
quite possible.
Or maybe we'll get to hear the song played in the next episode, maybe.
That would be fun.
But yeah, I'm looking for that song now. But I don't know. I said, well, they can't put it in the show, but if two people who happen to be actors were to, sing along to this song on TikTok, that would be perfectly allowed, right?
Yeah, that would actually be a very good promotional material for the show if the two of them were to sing it on TikTok.
Yeah, on their personal accounts.
Yeah.
So I'm here for that. I've pushed that in a couple places already.
Hopefully, because people are paying attention to your Twitter now, specifically from the show, more they have more access than we do. Maybe that'll get some traction. The interactions between Ben and Ian are fun, by the way. It's really
they've got great chemistry, and they did a really good job pulling off the fact that these two characters are best friends. Mm-hmm. Even though we really haven't seen them interact other than in the pilot.
They have to develop this instant chemistry, and they manage it quite well. So Addison is watching Corey while Ian is helping Ben prepare for the landing.
Oh, and Ben also asks, I thought we had a problem keeping two people in here. Yeah. Because that's something that, came up a lot in the discussions of the last episode. Or the discussions of 2 episodes ago when they had a problem holding both Jen and Addison was that, and we had a lot of speculations about the power drain and whatever. And they addressed it simply by Ian saying, well, I built a patch.
Right.
And ready to give us some Ian explanation.
And then Ben just shuts
Ben was like, okay,
down.
Great. We don't got time for this. You fixed it. There's a patch.
Right.
So, I mean, that's to us. They're saying, you don't need to debate this. We fixed it. We can do it now.
It's funny because they had to have filmed that scene before, that debate even came up.
Right.
So they had to have anticipated that people were going to question this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely... It definitely fit really well into the discussions that are happening in real life.
Ian ends up giving Ben crap for getting into the quantum leap accelerator in the first place, even though Ian is the one who suggested
it was very ironic.
Yes,
I picked up on that immediately, that Ian is going to complain about Ben leaping, and Ben calls them out on it.
Right.
And Ben's like, well, I heard you're the one that, told me to do it.
Oh, no, he didn't. Anyway. Ian ends up saying, well, okay, so Ben says, it's not time for this. We don't have time for you to give me crap. And Ian's like, well, if you crash and die, I'm not going to have another chance. And Ben's like, well, that's not funny. And Ian's like, it's a little bit funny. And I kind of agree.
Yeah.
These are great little moments between the two of them.
Chemistry between the characters. Really great chemistry and acting on both parts here.
Absolutely.
I hope we get to see more of them together in season 2.
I'm sure we will. Now that we've established that we can do this, we'll probably get to see Ben interact with other people besides just Addison all the time.
And then Ian also ends up saying, well, okay, fine, but you really hurt our trivia team.
Right. I mean, that's the worst thing,
So we learned that they're part of the Federal Employee League Trivia Tournament. And everybody on the team has their strengths, and without Ben, they're hurting.
Right. Corey ends up patching the line, Ian using the old hand link, the one we saw in What a Disaster.
So this is the hand link that they used when filming their original pilot that became the footage used in episode 6, What a Disaster. And I actually didn't even notice it on the first watch through because, I don't know, there's a lot going on. I was taking notes.
Right.
I was participating in a live chat, and I didn't see it. And then I saw people on Twitter talking about it. I was like, how did I miss that? So on rewatch today, I was like, oh yeah, there it is.
Yep.
And I like that one. I love the rectangle hand link. I hope they use it more. But I also thought it was really smart for them to bring it back for this instead of just having 2 round ones.
Right.
Because, like, it makes that whole very kind of awkward, oh yeah, use this other hand link for these scenes that we already filmed.
Right. It makes it a little bit better.
It makes it more, seamless. Where, without knowing the context of the filming, it makes more sense.
Absolutely.
Because within the context of the show, it was like, oh, this one time we saw this other hand link, and then if we never saw it again, it'd be really more, like, obscure. Like, why did that happen?
Right.
So I felt like it was really great of them to bring this in, and I do hope we see more of it, because even though they say it's an older model, I like it better.
Yeah, you've been pretty consistent with saying that pretty much all season 1, that you do not like the round hand link thingy.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
All right, so they end up successfully landing the plane without dying.
Right, and what Ian does with that hand link is really super cool, like, holographic stuff. Like, lights up everywhere, the runway, the control panel. And it was cool.
Right.
But then also I said, you did that without Ziggy? So the hand link in and of itself was able to do this?
Right.
Without the programming of Ziggy?
Right.
That's one of those moments where I feel like that should have been a Ziggy thing, not just a hand link thing hooked to the regular computer.
They basically made Ziggy. What do we even need Ziggy around for?
Exactly.
And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, it like I said, it boils down to, well, Ziggy gives us statistics, helps us make decisions quicker, eases up the research we have to manually do, but it feels like Ziggy should be more than that. And I don't necessarily love that we've turned Ziggy into a nice to have instead of a necessity. Right.
No, I agree with you. So yeah, they end up landing the plane. Ben and Ian laugh together, and Ian, well, no, he doesn't. Ben ends up leaping. In my notes, I have Ian leaps, and no, that's not.
That's a different timeline.
Okay, so Ian returns to the project to applause. We find out that Corey became a pilot, and the hijackers are still in prison.
Yeah, all 4 of them are arrested. Now, they still murdered 2 people, and another person, died as well. So there's 3, or no, he didn't die, you said. But they murdered 2 people.
I mean, I don't think he died. I think he was being seen.
But definitely, like, they murdered 2 people.
Yes.
Right from the beginning. That was their initial plan.
Right.
I don't buy the whole, everyone's going to be fine if, we get our money. You murdered 2 people before doing anything else.
Right.
This was never just a hijacking.
No. Well, I mean, that was probably just to keep the passengers calm more than anything else.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But I hope they're in jail for murder.
Well, yeah.
And not just,
I don't know. I think hijacking a plane would...
Sure, that sounds like a pretty
serious
high offense as well. And, I mean, I don't know. Do you have 366 counts of kidnapping? Does that go along with it?
I wouldn't know how you would charge that, to be honest.
But murder.
Yeah. I mean, like terrorism, murder. Yeah. There's lots of things that would keep them in prison for the rest of their lives. I am sure. Okay, so...
And all of the stewardesses got accommodation. That's not the word.
Accommodations, I think.
Is that the word?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. That's what I said out loud, but then it sounded like they got hotel rooms. But Lois got invited to the White House.
And Jen makes the comment that she must be very confused by that.
And
I thought
yeah,
that was funny.
she was gonna have a hard time explaining how did you manage to land that plane? I did one
funny.
now.
It's funny because I don't remember doing that at all, but if you say so, I must have blacked out or something, and I don't know. Yeah. Addison looks sad, and she explains that they find out what happens to everybody else, but they never find out what happens to Ben. And I'm assuming that they don't know Ben's future, is what she's saying there, and not like where Ben eventually ends up landing.
Right. Like everyone gets a happily ever after, and hers and Ben's is still in question.
Ian ends up consulting his tablet thingy. Usually, he can find Ben without the help, even without the help of Ziggy.
Yeah, they can pick up a signature of
some kind of quantum
when
signature.
Ben is, even if they don't know where.
Get a general idea of where he is without actually knowing exactly. But in this case, Ian can't. He doesn't see any signature whatsoever.
They're very perplexed at where'd Ben go.
I mean, this to me would indicate that he has, in fact, successfully leapt into the future. That would be my immediate conclusion based on everything.
Which we know.
Right.
They should know this because that's been the theory all season is that we're slingshotting into the future. So yeah, it's a little odd that we have this quizzical connotation around what's happening.
Right. We end up finding Ben in a broken down building, which we don't even really know where we are. There's snow and like, whoa, what's going on here?
It's very post-apocalyptical.
Yes. So we quickly realize that we're at the project. We see a little sign that says Ziggy.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Like Ziggy has a little nameplate somewhere?
Ziggy's nameplate. And doesn't look like it's in great shape. There's cut
the project
wires.
Has definitely seen better days.
Everywhere. This is a very sad looking future.
Ben seems to be surprised that it's snowing in L.A. How does he even know that he is in L.A.?
Exactly. He must have recognized the building.
I see the little plate that says Ziggy, but there's no way Ben saw that.
He must have recognized his surroundings.
I guess.
That's the only way it makes sense that he says, I'm in L.A.
We hear a voice from the shadows saying, nuclear winter. And it's done in a really kind of creepy way. And we realize that the voice is from a much older Ian. And it looks like Dean's 40-year estimate from Fate's Wide Wheel that he tried to walk back from their podcast last week was right on point. Because Ian definitely looks to be about 75 here. The makeup job is pretty excellent, by the way, I thought. So Ian says that he's been waiting they have been waiting a long time for him. Ben realizes he's leapt into the future, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the episode ends. My question is, who is Ben leaping into here?
That is one of the big questions.
Yeah, at first I thought maybe Ben was just leaping as himself.
But
he's
wearing style?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, afterwards I'm like, well, he's wearing like, basically like he's in a nuclear winter, post-apocalyptic clothing.
Right, he's in these ragged robes.
So I don't think he would have...
Comparable to what Ian is wearing.
Right, so I don't think he would have been wearing that if he was leaping as himself.
Right, I don't think he mirror imaged it.
He could be himself
in his older body.
But here's the question. If Ben was there, why didn't Ben go back in time?
Right, so if our Ben is in old Ben's body, and that's something I've seen people talking about, I don't think it makes sense, because that would confirm for us and for them that Ben makes it home. Because Ben would have to make it home in order to be working on the project in 40 years to be here with Ian.
Well,
and if we've confirmed Ben makes it home, then there shouldn't be a battle to fight.
Right.
Because that would have already been cemented as a fact.
This is clearly the original timeline.
Well,
or I'm not actually sure what timeline are we in.
Right, that's the thing. Like, I'm pretty sure the
the
way this show's always kind of worked is we're not looking at multiple timelines. We are moving with the timelines, right? When you make a change, you are now on that new course.
So Ben originally leaping should have changed the course of the series already.
Right.
I mean, Addison could still be killed.
Right. But it hasn't, the way I'm seeing it, changed this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
We still get to this point where all of this is happening.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack here.
Right.
So
right.
who could he be if he's not Ben?
Just
Because I think that would be more complicated if they say old Ben is there. And I think that would give it, like I said, it would give us that answer. Oh, Ben makes it home. And
it's definitely not Addison because she's dead, according to
Right.
everything we've heard.
right.
It could just be some random person.
That Ian brought in
Mm-hmm.
simply as a catalyst to have someone for Ben to leap into.
I mean, it could be somebody at the project.
It could be
at some
Magic.
point. Yeah.
Well, would Magic still be around in 40 years?
I don't know. And Magic is pretty up there in age.
Yeah,
Like
so
the
maybe
real
not-
actor is like in his 60s or
So
70s.
maybe
so.
Magic would not still be around.
Could be Jen.
Could be Jen, Janice.
Janice is a possibility.
Martinez even.
Yes, that's interesting. That's the other thing is, so what's, yeah, okay.
I mean, there's no saying that Martinez doesn't regret this and is involved in the decision to change what happened.
I mean, that's a very, very strong possibility. So, okay, what we see, like, in the trailer is, like, 16 seconds of Ben being at the project, which looks very much like the current timeline. Like,
See, now, I didn't pick up that was necessarily the project.
no? It looked like the project to me. But it was Addison
we
and
see
Ben.
Addison
Yeah.
and Ben, and we're not sure again who is Ben left into in this. So we've clearly have two leaps. We
Mhm.
have this far future leap, and then we have wherever the Addison stuff is happening.
Right.
And I was under the impression that whoever Ben is, Addison's not listening to him.
So I don't think he's leaping into himself once again, because otherwise I think Ben as himself could have a more easy time convincing Addison.
My theory, and I'm not sure how it would all fit together, but is that this leap is happening prior to the project.
Really?
And maybe he's himself, and maybe this is right around that time where they were working on the accelerator and fell in love, and maybe she doesn't trust him yet.
It's possible. So that would mean
I feel
even
like
more
she
weeks.
was made up to look a little younger.
Yeah? I mean, it was 16 seconds,
Yeah.
so I couldn't...
I mean, with all the different timelines, I don't know. I feel like if it's a future version of the Addison we're with today,
Mhm.
she wouldn't need to be explained
Right.
that her life's in danger.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm leaping into this person. I think this is the timeline in which you're going to be killed, so that's
Yeah,
why I'm here.
But in these few seconds, it really looked like he's trying to convince her.
Mhm.
And I don't think she would need convincing if it's
Right.
a future of our Addison.
So why is he during that time frame?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I can't explain it all, but I feel
Right.
like it was in the past.
Okay.
Like in the not so far past.
All right, so what I guess I told you guys last week, the title of the episode is Judgment Day, and the episode description reads as follows. It's not really that helpful, but I'm going to read it anyway. Ben's final leap of the season takes him closer to home than he ever expected. The team faces the ultimate showdown with Leaper X as they battle for the future of the Quantum Leap Project and their lives. So it's, by the way, the fact that in this episode, Ben ends up leaving 40 years in the future, where there's a nuclear winter, pretty much confirms everything that you were saying
Yes.
last week. And that makes it seem like the writers consciously picked those pieces of music that you got all that information out of to give us little hints.
Potentially. Or it all just
A giant
fit,
coincidence.
and, I dig too deep, which is totally possible too. I don't think I'm quite Oswald was an alien level of
conspiracies,
but yeah, I'm good at pulling random stuff and making it fit my theories, right?
I mean, since it's proven true, it seems to be that that's what they did, is they provided those hints in the music.
well, it'd be great if we could ask some of the creators of the show.
And maybe we will be able to do that someday.
If these were intentional nods, because I haven't seen any reference to that yet. But as we talk about next week, maybe we'll get some more insight onto if they were leaving these breadcrumbs.
And it seems to be that, so the story becomes a little clearer just by leaping into the future and seeing a nuclear disaster.
Right.
in an older
We
year.
know that there's been a nuclear war,
Mhm.
and we are in the aftermath of that, where Ben leaps in.
So sometime in the unspecified, and this actually makes more sense to me, because in the pilot episode of the series, they suggested that the events were bigger than the two of them.
Right.
If the story was all about saving Addison, that's not bigger than the two of them.
Right.
So we have Addison getting killed at some...
Which we're trying to prevent, obviously.
At some unspecified point in the future. And then at somewhere down the line, we have some kind of nuclear disaster. We don't know when that takes place. Sometime before the 40-year mark that we see Ian at.
And now nuclear winter, I was looking it up, they think that would last about 25 years after, the nuclear war that would cause it.
Would you be able to live in an environment where it was snowing because of a nuclear disaster?
So I just did a really quick search on nuclear winter. I didn't get real in detail, but I was seeing thoughts that, it would probably be species ending. But in media and pop culture, we see this a lot, where there's people living in a post-apocalyptic,
I mean, it doesn't look like there's
this.
too many people around.
Yeah, there's probably not a lot of people.
There's at least two.
It reminded me, actually, of Dark.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Okay, so the end of season 1 of Dark, which is also a time travel show, and if you haven't watched it, it's amazing. Dark on Netflix, go find it. We jump to the future, same as we did here at the end of the season, and they were also in a nuclear winter. And then, that whole second season was walking back like, well, how did this happen, and what happened during those 30 years?
Right.
So this setting reminded me a lot of that. I saw people last night comparing it to Game of Thrones, which I don't know those references. I didn't watch that show.
I never actually watched Game of Thrones.
But I think the point is, this is how a nuclear winter is depicted, is we've got this, there's pockets of people, they're not living well, wearing rags, doing things they have to do just to survive. And it makes sense that the entire use of time travel now in this future is going to be to fix this from happening.
Right. Okay, so, all right, so at some unspecified point in time, Martinez leaps in, ends up killing Addison for whatever reason on some mission.
And I still think I don't think
casualty.
I think she's a casualty. I don't think killing her was instrumental in whatever he was trying to do. I think she just happened to get killed during whatever he's doing. So
it begs the question, Martinez could be trying to stop this nuclear disaster, or he could be the cause of it.
Well...
Or he could have been trying to prevent it and failed. Obviously he did, because otherwise Ben would not have been needed.
Yeah, so I'm leaning to think that in the wake of this nuclear war, which is before where we are with Ian, future Ian, but more like when it's happening or right after it happens, I think the government hijacks Quantum Leap. I mean, the government's already running Quantum Leap, but like the military's like, we're now using it for war purposes, and sends a trained soldier, like you're a soldier, Martinez, in to do what needs to be done. As in like, hey, Quantum Leap personnel, like, your team's not going to do this. We're going to bring in a more structured military team to take over and try and prevent this war. Or try and help us win the war, whatever the case may be.
Right. In the case of our U.S. government, I would assume that they would be wanting to win the war, not just preventing it.
But I think that's why Martinez leaped. I think that's Martinez's bigger mission that he was referring to, was trying to prevent this, whatever happened that led to this nuclear winter.
It could be that the people in a further future, sometime in between our current timeline and 40 years out, that the government from the future recruited Martinez from the past to start leaving, because Martinez doesn't look that much older, so it couldn't be like Martinez is 70-something years old.
Right, but if this happens in 10 years, and... or, it's at the brink of it, but it hasn't happened yet.
So even that happens before older Ian gets involved, basically.
Right. But we also still haven't confirmed, when does Ian leap?
Right.
Does Ian leap from that? He can't leap from there because the equipment's done.
Right.
He had to have left before the equipment was destroyed. Unless there's another set of equipment somewhere.
I mean, maybe not all the equipment is destroyed. Maybe he was able to make a leap, but then it begs the question how they were able to get back.
Right. I think that Ian leapt at some intermediary point.
Mm-hmm.
And like they said, I've been waiting for you a long time, has now been waiting for this point where they know Ben's going to come meet them.
Mm.
And based on the press photos that have been released for the finale, we could see Ben and Ian working on lots of math equations. They're trying to come up with a solution for whatever they're going to do next. And I feel like maybe the whole reason Ian brought Ben to the future was so they could work this out together.
That makes sense.
And then send him on his final leg of the leap, which is when he confronts Addison.
So it couldn't be like, unless there's multiple leaps, there's no real good reason for Ben to leap to the point when they're still working on the quantum leap accelerator together. It has to be the moment where she gets killed. So
I don't know, unless there's just some piece of information he has to give her.
I guess it doesn't need to be that point. They could find another way other than preventing directly Martinez from killing her.
Right.
They could just reset the timeline in a very different way.
There's a lot we need to know.
Yes.
There's a lot of things, and I really hope we get all the answers. I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to pull this off. I think it's going to be an amazing story. I wish it was going to be more than 42 minutes.
Well, you know what? Since they are getting a second season, I don't mind at all if they don't stick to we're going to wrap this up all this season.
Well, we need to wrap up a lot of it, though.
Mm-hmm. We need to get a good chunk of the story, but at the same time, if they happen to end it on a cliffhanger and then wrap it up with the season 2 premiere, I would not be against that. I want them to be able to tell a satisfying story.
Yeah.
And I want them to,
see, we have so
rushing.
many thoughts of our own and things that we'd love to see that it's we could make a whole 10 episode season just around this.
Based on our ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be quite an episode for sure.
I think that's the biggest struggle is going to be what can you fit in one episode of television.
Right.
And, not even giving us a 2-hour finale.
I'm kind of curious if they filmed this episode way back when they originally had 12 episodes. So,
I don't think they did. I think they filmed pretty much in order. But I know they had, they would have had this story already ready to go. Because they would have included it either way.
Mm-hmm.
But they think they got the extra episode order early enough that it didn't affect filming.
Right.
So I had a question.
Okay.
If this Ian is with Ziggy in the apocalyptic future, does that stand to reason that Ian has continued to work with the project throughout their life?
I mean, it seems to stand to reason that they would have.
Yeah, that they have access still. Or, I guess they could have just come back to this once the place was abandoned. But if Ian's worked with the project throughout their lifetime, is Ian the one working on Ziggy during Martinez's era of leaping?
It's a good question.
And
actually, Ian
are we going to find out that Ian is Martinez's hologram?
Maybe.
That's my guess.
So it could very well be that Addison gets killed. And that, obviously we know that that's something that Ian ends up regretting. Whatever happens here is something that Ian regrets beyond the fact that they're in a nuclear holocaust, basically. So Ian probably spends a good chunk of the rest of his current life, obsessing over this to the point, that he's... Well, I don't even know where I'm going with this. I've kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, Ian basically regrets whatever happened here and has spent a good chunk of his life obsessing over what happened here.
I can see Ian being Martinez's hologram, being the person working directly with him through this. And Ian prior to the one that leaps. Killed. And this Ian doesn't know that that's how this is going to play out.
But here's the thing. Is they talk about that at the project. And since Ziggy knows everything that they discuss in the future, how do they not know that Martinez is going to end up killing Addison?
Well, prior to Ben leaping, there would have been a timeline that played out where Addison got killed and nobody would have known about it.
Right.
So in that timeline, that Ian wouldn't have known. And then leaps, and now they know.
Right.
There's a lot of timelines, a lot of versions of all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of possibilities here.
Yeah, my head is starting to hurt just thinking about this stuff.
And who is Ben?
Mm-hmm.
In both places.
Yeah. I speculated that Ben was going to leap into himself. I'm not so sure about that now.
I don't think it's him in the far future.
No.
Because, like I said, that I just feel like the connotations of, oh, well, that guarantees Ben gets home kind of breaks where we're going with this whole showdown. I think it's possible he's him in the second leap.
Yeah. But he seems to be in conflict with Addison, and I don't know why that would be the case.
Yeah, I don't...
If he was himself.
I don't know. Maybe he leaps into Martinez.
Maybe.
And they don't trust him because he's Martinez?
Possibly.
Definitely we're going to see Martinez. I don't think there's any question about that.
I mean, that was in the episode description, so...
I hope we get to see everybody. I hope Janice is around. Oh, maybe he's Janice.
That's possible. And that could be explained why they're not exactly friendly with each other.
And why Janice is involved in all of this in the first place. Maybe they... I don't know. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see. We've got definitely 2 leaps, possibly more in this episode. I think it's going to be a don't blink kind of episode, I think.
Right. In
order for them to like explain all this, it's going to be nonstop.
No doubt.
And it's going to be exciting. And then,
absolutely.
And then we're done for a season.
Yeah.
It's like, I want it to get here so bad, and then also it's like, oh, then sadness.
Yes. Now we have to wait a while.
Wait a while.
And there's a writer's strike looming, which you mentioned to me. We didn't do it on air, but currently they're filming season 2. You said they were on episode 4.
I saw something last week that they were filming episode 4. So I don't remember where I saw that or if that was entirely a reliable source or not. But,
I looked into this.
But they are filming.
Yeah. I looked into this, and I guess the current deal expires on May 1st. So if they don't reach some kind of agreement, that's probably when the strike is going to take place.
Okay. So we have a month of filming left before the possibility of there being a delay in production. And
hopefully they straighten this out. I guess their beef is getting paid with all the new streaming and content options out there, YouTube and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So that's
whoever's in negotiations with, with the unions, get your stuff together.
Absolutely nobody has sympathy with anybody if you're gonna have sympathy with anybody, it should be the writers, because the writers are not like movie stars that get paid a ton of money. A lot of times they get gypped out of credit and they don't make a lot of money. Yeah. So if you're gonna have sympathy with anybody, it should be the writers. But
I also saw that there were possibly other strikes looming as well. Really? Yeah. It might be a multi union guild strike.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
So possibly like an actor strike too.
Yeah, I forget exactly what I saw, but there were other unions mentioned.
Oh, okay. I didn't look into it that hard. I just did a basic Google search and came up with the writer's strike.
Things like this are always kind of looming whenever there's, contract negotiations and such.
Yeah, it would not be good for the next season of Quantum Leap if there were a big strike. It would definitely impact things, but then again, it would impact everything. So it's not like it would just impact this show. The good news is they are already filming. So if we already have 4 episodes and we're going to get a few more done in the next month before anything possibly happens, we could still get the first half of a season aired without any more production, assuming post-production's able to process the episodes and they're not on strike. Yeah, as long as that's not the case. I think I think that would just affect the writing, and if you're already producing an episode, that doesn't come into play unless you're making changes to the script or something.
Well, they do. Right. Like, scripts are live when they're actually creating it, but then post-production's a whole separate thing, getting it from the time that they're done filming to the time that it goes on, on the air. That's a whole nother deal. But yeah, I saw people were like, oh, I don't want to see the show go on hiatus. I don't want to wait a year. Boo-hoo. It's not fair. But listen, we got to be thankful.
Yes.
We have a second season order.
Yes.
They are filming it right now.
Mm-hmm.
We could be going into this finale questioning if this was going to be a series finale or not.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, we've all been there with other shows.
Mm-hmm.
We do not have to start a hashtag Save Quantum Leap next week.
We do not need to do that.
We don't need to do that. And that's like a relief that we can just enjoy this episode knowing that season 2 is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we gotta wait. That's how media works.
Yep, absolutely. Do you have any other thoughts on this week's episode or next week's?
Oh, boy. I covered everything in my notes.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got it. Oh, just to circle back, completely unrelated to this, but I was telling you earlier that Adam and I just watched
oh, yeah, right.
A Leap for Lisa.
Talk about his theories.
We watched A Leap for Lisa. And similar to how we're just kind of talking about, like, oh, if this person leaps then and there and all that, in that episode we had, where Bingo is put in the accelerator and leaped into himself.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam is convinced after watching that episode that there's an extra version of Bingo out there now. That it didn't rectify itself. And he thinks that there's a version of Bingo that didn't become Al that's out there leaping through time. That got stuck perpetually leaping without any assistance.
Interesting.
It is interesting. And we kind of got a headache trying to go around and around talking about the Bingo that Sam leaped into, and then the Bingo that was put in the accelerator and went back a week earlier, and who took whose place, and who's in the waiting room, and yeah.
So that would be basically create another version of Al.
We got at a standstill, but he's convinced that there's a version of Bingo that went leaping through time.
Huh.
And everybody forgot about because they assumed he just took himself back over.
Wow, that's really sad for him.
Yeah. But I thought it was an interesting take. Adam seems to see these episodes a little differently than I do.
Yeah, I mean, he thinks on a different level than you or I.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he would tend to see things a little bit differently. Yeah. On another completely unrelated note, though somewhat related to this, I got into a bit of a discussion on one of the Facebook groups.
Okay.
We've been talking all season long, asking the question, where is Ben's body?
Yeah.
So, in the original series, Sam was leaping around in time in his own body with just a physical aura. And that didn't necessarily make any sense, but, you just kind of went with it. If you thought about it for more than 10 seconds, you would get a headache.
Yeah, and whether you agreed that he was in his body or not, there was a counter body in the waiting room.
Right.
That looked like him.
In this series, what we've gotten is what amounts to a possession. That's how it was referred to in OEA Little Pig.
Right.
And, it's been said, you are in this body, this person's body.
Makes more sense.
It does. But then our question was, where is Ben's body?
Where is Ben's body? Right. If Ben's consciousness is inside someone else's body, controlling their body, where is Ben's body?
And these people that I was talking to seem to suggest that Ben's body was going with Ben. So not only was his soul there, but his body was there, like mixed in with this person's body.
Yeah, I've seen that discussed too, but not fleshed out.
They say that when Ben brought up the law of entanglement in the series premiere, that was a law of quantum leap that made it so that Ben's body was also there. And my initial reaction to that was, that does not make any sense. Like, two bodies cannot occupy the same space at the same time.
Yeah, but also you can't time travel. So.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. But so they brought up the law of entanglement, but there was something else the woman brought up, and she said she looked into the quantum physics and she couldn't understand it, so it was way over her head.
Yeah.
But that was basically what they were going with. That Ben's body is with Ben.
Yeah, and I've seen that theory kind of thrown around. I think even by people involved in the show, but. I get the impression that they haven't, declared anything specific on purpose. Like, they may want to explore this at some point in the future.
Maybe, possibly.
And give us a more concrete, version of what's exactly how all this is working. But in my mind, it would make a lot more sense if there's an unconscious Ben body
Right.
somewhere on life support.
Yes, that would be the best option for me.
Yeah.
But the
But in that case, why haven't we seen it? Why hasn't Addison been visiting him?
Right, referencing it, anything.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, these two people think that that's just not the case. That basically it's the body is with Ben.
Yeah. If we got any expansion on this, that's what I would hope for, is Ben is comatose on life support.
Mm-hmm.
With a shell of a body being
either they intend to explore
alive.
this further, or they're never going to bring it up, and
yeah.
they're just going to like let it.
And the more seasons we get, the more room they'll have to give us more lore, and not have to make that decision between the story we're trying to tell and telling the lore.
Right.
I mean, even within the original show, a lot of the lore comes from later seasons. We didn't see the waiting room until A Leap for Lisa.
Right.
The last episode of season 4 is the first time we physically see the waiting room. It was mentioned,
we heard about it
a lot through, I think, season 3 is the first time we mentioned it. Maybe even somewhere in 2. But the first time we physically see it is in A Leap for Lisa, and then we see it a lot in season 5.
I mean, facing facts, the original Quantum Leap was not hard sci-fi. Basically, they told us just enough to justify the story that they were telling.
Oh yeah, and they contradicted themselves constantly.
Left and right, which is why it drives me crazy when people on the Facebook groups are like, well, the original series said this. And I'm like, yeah, but the original series also said that.
Yeah.
Like, they contradicted themselves left, right, and center all the time.
Right. Which is one reason I like that this series does take a firmer stance on things. Even if I don't necessarily agree with the direction they went with that stance every time.
Ultimately, I don't really care what stance they take. I'm here for the story. I mean, because none of this really makes any sense if you really look at it for more than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So you either have to go with it and accept it, or stop watching the show, really, when it comes down to it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's just nice to get that explanation a little bit more clearer on where they intend to go.
Yeah, like, they made it very clear that the rules in this show are, if the host dies, Ben dies. If you fail the mission, you're stuck there.
Right. Which
were things that were always wishy-washy in the original series. They told us that at the beginning.
But then they kind of flip-flopped.
But then they completely flip-flopped.
Right.
Like, they never really took a stance on, are you going to die? They were like, well, you might die, so let's not die. And then, as far, in the beginning, they were like, you have to complete the mission to leap. And then later they say, obviously that, completion of the mission doesn't...
Yeah, they just started saying that in the original series. And my reaction to it was like, wait, what? Since when?
Right.
We were never told that. Now you're just treating it as a fact.
Yeah. So I hope that they don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they don't flip-flop direct statements like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do decide to flip-flop something, they make it so that the team's surprised they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
Like make it, acknowledge that you're changing it if you're going to change it.
Well, like they did in this episode with the whole two people camping in the same waiting room thing. They explained that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like a detailed explanation.
Like you don't have to give us an explanation. You just got to tell us that there is one. You thought of that.
Mm-hmm. So it's not like, you don't care. You're just being lazy.
Right.
Basically.
Exactly. Don't contradict your own lore
mm-hmm.
without acknowledging that you're changing the lore.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I got. I mean, do you got anything else?
I think we talked a lot. And like you said, this episode fell into this kind of funny pocket where we're spending more time talking about what's going to happen next, than giving this episode itself a fair chance.
It's possible that in the future when we're watching this episode, we'll be able to think about it more.
Yeah.
Rather than what's next or what was before, with the previous episode being as excellent as it was. But for now, it's just kind of it was good, but we're ready to move on. Yeah,
we're ready to talk about Endgame here.
All right, so we would like to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at...
I can be reached on Twitter at TVN Coupon Talk.
And you have your Facebook group, which I didn't provide the link last time, but I will this time. And if you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Core Productions Facebook page. You can join Stacie's new Facebook group page, which is not really new, but she recently took it over. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And you can buy something from the Corn Production store on Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions, signing off.